Hey everybody, how's it going? A little bit of a different situation today. I'm recording this sitting in my van in a parking garage while waiting for Tara, who's in an appointment. So I figured I had a chance, so I might as well record something while I had that chance. So I've posted and linked an article below. The general idea of the article is talking about injustice of God and why don't we see God work and why does God seem so absent at times. It sort of comes out of this whole situation in Ukraine and what's going on with Russia attacking them, and it just feels incredibly unjust. It feels like there was no good justification for the war. It feels like there's all sorts of atrocities being committed, and it's something that can drive many people to say, see, if God was all-knowing, if God was all-powerful, if God really cared, he would never allow these things to happen. And that's understandable. I can understand why people react that way. But as I've looked at this sort of thing, I think the conclusion I've come to is that if God was really going to get rid of all of the injustice in the world and all of the terrible things that are happening, whether it's in our life or whether it's something major and much grander scale like the invasion of Ukraine, God would have to basically take over each one of us. He would have to stop us from making many of the decisions that we would make. He would have to stop us from facing any of the consequences from our decisions. If somebody wants to get drunk and drive, God just makes it so that they're not actually drunk, or he makes it so that nothing they do can cause them to crash. And in one way, that sounds wonderful, but in another way, we realize when we take it to its full extent and apply it to the many, many situations in our life, that would make us nothing more than God's playthings. We're really not making choices. Our choices have no consequences. They have no value. They have no bearing. And so we're forced with this reality that we can either have free will and have choices that actually mean something and deal with all the consequences, or we can be God's puppets, God's playthings. And so I think that's the reality that we face, whether we like it or not. And from that, I think there's just a deep sense that we need to recognize that's the world that we live in, and that's the relationship that we have with God. He has given us this world. He has given it to us for our purposes, and as much as he wants to work with us, most of the world doesn't really want to work with God. We want to do it on our own, and so we are left with facing the consequences. It's true that God will intervene at times to extend his plan of salvation to reach as many people as possible, to bring as many people into his kingdom as possible, or he may interact a little bit with us individually to draw people closer to him or to a knowledge of him. But for the most part, he doesn't. And we will rarely know why. We're dealing with a person in God. We're not dealing with a law of nature that we can have some mathematical equation to figure out. We're not dealing with a force that we can just control. God is a person, and he has given us this world, and he intervenes at times to further his purposes, but we often can never know the specifics of that. And so that's a lot of what I touch on in this particular message. I also think, though, that it's important to recognize that God has given us an incredible gift in the midst of this. He doesn't control us. He doesn't let us control him by responding to everything, but he has entered this world through Jesus. He has entered this world to live it, to understand it, and so that when we do face incredible difficulties, we know that he understands, that he's gone through it. We can receive some comfort from him because we know that God is present in every situation, and he's also given us this promise of life, this promise that justice will be served. And so that's an incredible gift that God has given us, and in any given moment that might not feel like it's enough, but countless people have spoken of the comfort that they have received from knowing that God is with them. And when we look at a situation like Ukraine, we would say that God is with each one of those people there, that God is present, that God is understanding what they are going through, and that he will eventually bring justice and peace in the right time, in the right way. And that probably won't look like how we want it to look. but he'll be there. In the meantime, we're just faced with this question. If God has given us this world and let us face the consequences of our bad actions, he's also given us this world and given us this charge to say, what are you doing about this situation? This is your world. I'm there to walk alongside of you. I'm there to give you my spirit. I'm there to help you. So I think we need to not just rail against God in his lack of presence, but we need to acknowledge that God is saying to us, what are you doing about it? And what is your role in this? And how can we help? So that's a little bit of what I touch on in the blog. That's a little bit of a challenge that I leave for you and for me to say, how do we respond to this situation as best as we can and not just get mad at God for not responding. So hope you take a read. Hope you like it. Hope this gave you some idea of what I'm talking about in that. God bless. Have a great day.